Hi, I'm Dr. Laura Gallagher, and welcome to part 2 of our series, shot here in Marrakesh, Morocco, Why Create Company Culture, the competitive edge you didn't know you could have. In part 1, we talked about why company culture matters. In some organizations, the implications are life and death. But in most organizations, the implications are more about wasted time, resources, and energy. According to research published in Personnel Psychology, top performers are 400% more productive than average performers. And what do these top performers value? Company culture. So how do you attract, develop, and retain top talent in your organization? You create the culture you want to get the results you want. Let's talk about how. What I want to focus on now is explaining why creating company culture starts with you, or the self at its core. We often talk about company culture like it's this living, breathing thing that evolves, and to a degree it is. Organizations are complex systems, and culture is something that emerges from a variety of factors. But the reality is, it still always boils down to human behavior. That's why our inside-out model of creating company culture has self at its core. You must focus first on developing the individuals on the team to maximize the effectiveness of the team to make your company culture your competitive edge. Everything in an organization comes back to human behavior. Humans create process. Humans design equipment. Humans build software. Humans run meetings. Humans collaborate, or they avoid each other. Humans inspire each other, or they put each other down. Humans communicate openly, or they withhold knowledge, information, and feedback. It all comes back to human behavior. So if you want to make your culture your competitive edge, you have to focus on human behavior. Man, human behavior, super complex, right? It's part of what I love about being a psychologist. It's fascinating for me. The good news is we have tools, we have frameworks, and we will give you the knowledge and the skills to really simplify it, to understand it. Just like our inside-out model, if you truly want to develop an individual, you have to do it from the inside out. What we see from people on the outside is their behavior. And if you've ever led anybody, you know that trying to change someone's behavior is not as simple as telling them to. Or maybe that can work in the short run. But if you actually want to transform someone's behavior, you have to go deeper. And that's because our behavior is actually driven by the feelings that we have about and toward the people around us. And those feelings actually come from how we feel about ourselves. Because at our core is the self-concept. So let me give you an example of this. Okay, so I'm 25 years old and I'm working for NASA at Kennedy Space Center. And I'm working with this group of emerging leaders. And so my mission for the day is to help them understand the value and the importance of mentoring so they can find a mentor to work with. And they're my peers, but most of them are older than me. And already, before even coming into this room, I find myself questioning, are they going to listen to me? Do they think I'm credible? Do they have any idea about my background? Do they trust me? So I'm already feeling pretty nervous. So I'm sitting at this conference room in Cars Park, which is one of the off-site facilities near the Space Center. And I'm talking about mentoring, and I'm not getting any engagement from them. They're not interacting, they're not answering my questions. And just at the moment of deepest self-doubt, one of the women says in a very snarky tone, I don't even understand why we need to have a mentor. And I snapped back, why are you even in this program? The second the words were out of my mouth, I wanted to just pull them back in. Like, shoot. So I tried to recover and say, I mean, you know, why ever you maybe wanted to be in the program, that's the same thing that a mentor can help you with. But the damage was done. It was incredibly clear that I was defensive and not showing up my best. So fast forward a couple years, and I've actually sought out a mentor of my own. And I'm sitting there in the cafeteria having a lunch meeting with him. And he says, all right, I want to be really open with you. And I already kind of feel my physiology responding. My heart starts to beat a little faster. And I say, okay. He said, so I told my boss that you asked me to mentor you. Now, his boss is a senior executive at the Space Center and one of the most respected. And so he continues, I tell her that I'm mentoring you, and she goes, ugh, good, she needs it. What? I was completely shocked. I was confused and incredibly upset. I felt my heart pounding. I felt my face just twist in confusion. What was happening? I'd barely even worked with this woman. I didn't understand where this was coming from. I was completely flabbergasted. So he said, any idea why she might say that? And at the moment, I didn't. But we talked it through, and as it turned out, the senior executive is actually really tight with one of the women in the room that day at Cars Park. And as soon as I mentioned that piece, my mentor said, oh yeah, that's it. That's definitely where she got it from. So here it is, years later, and this one moment where I didn't feel like I was in control of my own behavior because I didn't have enough self-awareness and self-acceptance and self-accountability to show up the way I wanted to. I now have this negative reputation with a leader that I really respect, who barely even knows me. So what I hope you can get from this example is the power of self-awareness. It was huge for me to realize that it was my own thoughts that triggered that kind of behavior in the first place. It was me thinking that they didn't trust me or that they wouldn't find me credible that led me to feel so defensive. It wasn't even her snarky tone, it was all me. And what I didn't realize is that it was actually my own self-concept and the parts of me that I didn't even know about that doubted my own ability to add value. So from that point on, it became incredibly clear to me. I always want to focus on self-awareness. I always want to focus on being self-accountable. And I want to feel as in control of my own behavior as I can. So individual behavior, which is ultimately what truly comprises company culture, always comes back to how each individual feels about him or herself. So what does this mean for you as a leader wanting to create company culture? How do you have any effect over how the people on your team feel about themselves? Well, come back next week for part 3 of our series, Why Create Company Culture? The Competitive Edge You Didn't Know You Could Have, and I'll tell you more.